Good day, friends. Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chasmith, aka Just Chaz, and I am on a mission to inspire people to take their power back and help them to realize that each and every one of us has a healer within our own self. When we can create an environment that supports healing and get out of our own way, we are truly capable of healing in mind, body, and soul. Whether you've been following along this whole time or if this is your first episode, thank you for being on this journey with me. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you feel called to help me spread this message of empowerment, healing, and possibility, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcast or an Apple 5-star rating if and only if I have earned it, or share your favorite episode on social media or with a friend. So, in what way did you shake up your routine last week for the weekly neuroplasticity challenge? I would love to hear about it. This week's challenge is actually inspired from today's episode with our guest, Sarah Dakhili. For some of you, this might come very easy. And for others, it might be more of a challenge, but I really, really encourage you to have fun with the challenge and do it in spite of the challenge that it might bring, because that is the point of a challenge, right? To help us shift things up, to do something that we otherwise might not regularly do, or to get a little outside of our comfort zone. So, this week, I encourage you to tap into your inner creative and, create something. Grab a marker, a colored pencil, set a chalk, some paints, and create something. But rather than worry about the outcome or worry about what it will look like or how good it will be, try to surrender to the process and just allow yourself to create from a place of joy, from curiosity, from exploration. Do it for the simple act of creating and immerse yourself in this process rather than worrying about the outcome. Play some music and just allow the tool that you have in your hand to just express itself, express the music on paper or on canvas or on a piece of scrap wood. Honestly, it can be anything. It can be a notebook. You don't even have to show anyone. So you can feel even more confident that you're creating just for the experience of it, because no one has to see it. And you could show somebody, you could share it with the world, because no matter what the outcome is, it's going to be perfect and beautiful. Many of us, we're quick to dismiss our inner creative, saying that we aren't artistic, but I truly believe we all have an inner creative waiting to be expressed. And again, it's more for the experience, not the result. And as a side note, maybe you have children and you could include them in this challenge and make it a play date with them too. And if you do feel inspired to share, I would love, love, love to see what comes through for you this week. So I had a quick announcement, something I'm so excited to share with you guys. Some of you may already know or not that I've been hosting one free movement class per week that was designed to help anyone in the brain retraining or TMS community to reestablish safety in their bodies through playful movement that is not only good for our bodies, but also our brains. I'm really excited that I will actually be launching a second class during the week that is going to be a small donation-based class on Tuesday mornings. And if you are ready to show your brain how strong and resilient you are and add movement into your life and want some direction, I have a link in the show notes where you can submit a request for more info. Okay, so back to the episode. As you will soon discover, Sarah, our guest, is an absolutely beautiful soul of a person. She is so well-spoken and has such a beautiful grasp on life, self-love, self-discovery, tapping into our inner creative and our joy. Sarah is a holistic counselor, art therapist, artist, and writer herself with one published book. And I had the most wonderful time chatting with this lovely woman, and I am so excited to share this chat with you all today. I know there are tons of gold nuggets in this episode, and there's something for everyone. And I really encourage you to follow along with Sarah on her social media, including her art page, because her art is so fun and beautiful and inspiring. With all of that said, let's welcome Sarah to the show. All right, Sarah, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me and everyone listening today.
Thanks for having me, Shaz.
Absolutely. So, for the listeners, I would love if you could maybe start out with a brief intro, a little bit about who you are and what led you to get into the healing work, and from there we'll get into what tools really were catalysts for you in experiencing the healing that you were looking for.
Okay. So I work as a psychotherapist and a clinical mental health social worker. And I've been basically working in the field of mind body syndromes for the last 10 years and went through quite a journey of overcoming various, mind body syndrome related issues myself, everything from developing an eating disorder as a teenager and basically being in that journey for 10 years and then moving on to other kind of common TMS related symptoms, from severe back pain to TMJ and hip pain and IBS related issues and so on. And so now I work within that area, within that field, and I support others in their recovery journey. And yeah, so that's a little bit of an intro as to why I'm working within this area, because I've had a lot of personal experience with it myself, and I can truly appreciate how frustrating and how difficult the journey can be, and how important it is to have people who can truly relate to the experience, of just feeling completely lost in many ways and not knowing where to turn and how to recover and what to do. And more than anything, realizing that your power is within you, and we all have a healer within us, and we really can recover from the various bodily and mental illnesses and challenges that we're faced with.
Yeah, I say literally part of my mission statement at the beginning of every episode that our power is within us and that we all have the healer within. Perfect.
That's
perfect.
Amazing.
Well said, Sarah.
Thank you.
So just to kind of get an understanding, you said for like the last 10 years you've been working in the mind body field industry, like in that sector, as a therapist and social worker. So was it your own journey of recovery that led you into that work?
Yes, it is. But it's interesting because I never actually intended to do this kind of work. And it's interesting. I personally believe that healing is not just mental and physical, it's also spiritual. And I truly believe that there was um, something, at work here when it comes to this journey. I feel like I was guided into this work. And I remember when I was at university, and we have to do a couple of months of internship. And I was really struggling to accept the placement position that I'd been, given. And the first initial one that I was given was to work within an eating disorder unit. And I knew that because of my own personal history with that, it would be quite triggering for me to be in that area. So I actually declined, the position. And the person who is in charge of the placement officer, who's in charge of the whole thing, she said to me, Sarah, I really believe that this will be a good place for you. And I thought, well, I have to share something with you. I have personal experience with this stuff. And quite frankly, I'm scared. And she said, well, unfortunately, there's nowhere else I can send you. There's nothing else. We don't have any other internships available. Everything else has been handed out, and this is the only thing available. So you have to do it, basically. And so being confronted with that situation really supported my own healing. And I mean, not necessarily healing in terms of symptoms, because I had already recovered from the eating disorder issue, but it was more healing on a mental and an emotional and just basically a spiritual level. Because I started to gain a newfound sense of compassion for myself, for what I had been through. Because, up until that time, I felt ashamed. I felt ashamed for having put myself through something like that, or there was a sense of blame, self blame. And that experience really helped me open up to that compassion and love for myself and for anybody else whoever goes through that. And then my second internship, because we're meant to have two internships in the Australian educational system, it's actually commonly you do two different internships. And the second one was working with families who were homeless and working with families who had drug and alcohol and domestic violence issues, which is also another thing that I had personal experience with in my own childhood, especially the domestic violence part and the homeless part. And so it was, again, incredibly confronting. I remember coming home and crying every day. And yet, those experiences really pretty much built that foundation for me to recognize that there was some kind of, there was almost like a predestined journey at play here. There was almost like I was being guided into really working through some of my own blockages about my own journey, and then being able to fully embrace my role as a healer and a supporter of others. So that's pretty much how the journey started. And since then I've had experiences of working with all kinds of different people in all kinds of different areas, from refugees and migrants, and working with women in particular as well, and even with men, and then going to teaching this stuff at college. We have our college system is called TAFE, and even working within the university sector before commencing my own private practice, and now specializing particularly in TMS related symptoms and mind body related issues.
So cool when you can finally get to a place where you can look back and see how the dots connected and have a deeper understanding for why you might have had to go through the things, the hardships that you went through, and the areas of your life that you had to navigate, and to be able to see it actually as, how you said, like being guided into the work you were meant to do. Like, it's such an amazing, that's so cool.
Yeah, I still think it's cool myself, because there are times when my egoic mind tries to take over. I mean, that's how the mind works. It's always trying to protect us against things that feel uncomfortable. And I still have those moments, and I still have to remind myself that there is a greater power at work. And although I acknowledge that not everybody is of the same belief and understanding, for me personally, I've had plenty of evidence to show me that I'm not the one in charge here. It's almost like my only job is to practice letting go, practice allowing, and following the signs, tapping into that part of myself that I call the deeper, wiser self, and allowing for that self to guide me. Because I believe that's the part of us that's connected to, this thing that we call the universe, or God, or a higher power, or, the power of all that is. And so I truly believe that when it comes to healing and recovery, the practice is to surrender. The practice is to let go of our need to control how things happen, when things happen, and to trust. Because I think that's the hardest thing for people with, especially if you think of the typical TMS personality types. and I know because I've been one, um, we tend to want to control pretty much everything. There's a sense of fear of things not going our way. And
Yes.
this is commonly due to, a highly activated nervous system and a history of trauma. Because I truly believe that trauma is not something that, I mean, I personally went through quite a personal story with, trauma and what happened, within my childhood. But I don't believe that trauma is necessarily just, happens to people who've been through abuse or neglect. I think when you live in a world that is, quite outright threatening and unsupportive, from, the educational system to the healthcare system, and even sometimes our workplaces, we're constantly in a state of trauma almost, And a lot of people are also marginalized and have to personally try and navigate themselves through discrimination, oppression, prejudges, and so on. And so this state of relative helplessness can pretty much contribute to that trauma that I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point. It's definitely, I think you're right. Like people often hear that word and they dismiss it so quickly if they didn't have some big, massive, specific type of thing that happened in their life without realizing the micro traumas that add up, like you're just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's really all about becoming conscious of those traumas, acknowledging them, and showering them with compassion and kindness. And this is what the practice is, the daily practice of, once you become conscious of what's happened, once you become conscious of these unconscious belief systems and limiting belief systems and some of the painful events that we may have suppressed, then it's about, you know, bringing in that compassion, that empathy, that love, and learning to reparent ourselves. I mean, I'm a big believer of the power of just taking on that part of yourself that is called the inner child and really reparenting yourself in a way that, you know, more than likely your parents never would have been able to do that for you, and becoming a guide for that little child within you. And that guide is largely non-judgmental. It's a guide that is most likely, observing from a state of awareness and wisdom, and kind of supporting that little child within us, and even allowing that child to sometimes sit with the discomfort of some of the consequences of their actions, as opposed to trying to avoid and escape or punish, and really just, being like this loving entity for ourselves that we don't often get to experience from others, because I mean, my parents, I've definitely gone through the process of forgiving them and understanding them. And I share a great deal about this in my book, Coming to Life. And I've come to realize that even if my parents were to be perfect individuals, they would never, they wouldn't be able to actually help me with my recovery today. Yeah, this is really my job, my responsibility. And that's what's helped me with my own recovery, to feel it fully, take on the role of being that parent for that little girl inside of me, and every day checking in with her and asking her, how can I love you better today? How can I support you? How can I be kinder to you today? What do you need from me? What are some of the things that I can do for you? And that's why I think having a reflective practice is absolutely crucial when it comes to this work. I know a lot of health professionals, TMS related health professionals, and of course, Dr. Sano recommends journaling. which I think is a great way to become more self-aware. But some people, struggle with journaling. And then I say, well, start with even just, asking yourself a couple of simple questions every day. Just tuning into what it is that you need and being completely honest with that. Because honesty is absolutely crucial. I mean, without that, there's no way of reaching authentic power and authentic empowerment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I really love what this last piece of advice you just gave to actually check in every day, and ask yourself, how can I love you better today? Or how can I be kinder to you today? I love that suggestion, because we can get so caught up in using so many different modalities and tools, but then the very essence is we can still forget to do that little bitty check-in that can be so powerful and so honoring, And I mean, I know a lot, like you mentioned, a big common personality trait of anyone who ends up with TMS or mind body syndromes symptoms is control, the need to control. And it's almost like you think control or perfectionism or goodism or all these things. And what happens is these personality traits in our everyday life could potentially lead us to end up experiencing some symptoms that are not favorable. And then what I've noticed is sometimes in the act of trying to recover or heal, we almost take those same traits into that process of recovery and healing and want to make everything perfect and do all the things and then do more things and then control the outcome and then decide on the timeline it's going to take, all without doing that simple thing you just said, which is just, can we just check in with ourselves?
Absolutely. And I think, I truly believe that this is a daily practice. I don't think that this is something that I've mastered by any means. And I don't even believe in mastery in that sense. It's more just, that figure of speech where we think that, we have to be perfect or we have to get to a place where nothing challenges us anymore. I mean, I always say, if that's what you really want, if that's the expectation that you have, then you should have become a duck, because I don't think you can be a human and expect that life won't challenge you. I believe that no matter how conscious we become, life is a school. This is a philosophy that I have. Life is a school. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. And the more we can become, practice that compassion and kindness and let go of that control, the easier in many ways it will be for us to manage the challenges. Because I mean, the inner child is not obviously a child living inside of you. It's a figurative and metaphorical concept that stems from Freud's psychological theories. And it's a reflection of the child that you once were. So we all have a history, and we're all influenced by our environment and, the various events and people that have been in our lives. And by the time we reach the age of 5, we've made a subconscious decision about how we should be, what we should do in order to feel loved and survive within our immediate environment. And so when we move into our adulthood, we continue to form beliefs and scripts about how life should be, how we should be. So we literally carry these immature beliefs with us into our adult lives and allow them to run our lives, and our relationships, which is why you sometimes see people who are, let's say in their 30s or 40s or whatever, acting like little kids sometimes and having those tantrums or really, getting into, especially within relationships, because that's where you really see this stuff come out. Yeah. And when you revisit these beliefs, you start to discover that they really reveal a great deal about how you perceive yourself and how you perceive the world around you. And when we don't do this, we continue to remain unconscious. We end up living our adult lives with the emotional maturity of a child. And all of a sudden, this inner child starts running the show, asking for the attention, understanding, and love that it didn't receive as a child. So, I believe this is why we have so many people, quite consumed with social media and, the concept of, I mean, I've been one myself, just sharing and and sharing is fine. I like sharing because sharing can be very healing, but just that whole look at me and pay attention to me and how many likes I have and who's following me and what can I do to get more attention from others. And so a lot of people in today's world are living with their inner child running the show. And yeah, I believe that this is something that we need to actually take charge of, take responsibility for that part of ourselves and lovingly guide and nurture this little kid within us. And so this goes to the next thing that I believe is important for recovery. For me personally, the concept of bringing joy into your life is, how I think we can tap into that place of both feeding our inner child, but also kind of, keeping it happy and also healing, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's like incorporating play. I think we sometimes grow up and we forget how to play. And I know in the um, brain retraining program that I used as like my primary tool for my becoming journey, incorporating joy and laughter and playfulness is such a huge component.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I learned. I'm still learning. I'm still forever learning. But one of the things that has been supporting me and continues to support me is just a few years ago, I accidentally, not that I believe in accidents, but I just happened to walk past this community center where there was a whole bunch of people sitting there and painting. It was like, I thought it was an art workshop. So I had this, I was on my way to go for a walk, but then there was this strong feeling, a desire to just walk in there. It was a curiosity. And I really believe in the power of curiosity. So I walked in and I asked the first person I saw, what's going on here? Are you having an art class? And they said, no, this is just basically a free community space where you can just come and paint and play with color. And we provide material. And basically, it's just like there's this person who truly believes in this cause and is funding it. So people can just come in whenever they want and just, you know, paint and play with color. And so I couldn't help but to just do it straight away. And I said, well, can I just join you? And I started doing that. And there was a feeling that emerged from within me that is hard to describe. It was almost like I became that happy little girl again. I became incredibly present and just playing with color and not having a sense of, having somebody there to tell me what I should paint, how I should paint, what colors I should choose, gave me a sense of freedom. And so ever since that experience, I've basically, I went out and got myself my own material and I just really dived into it. And now I'm painting these incredibly big paintings and there's rarely a day that goes by that I don't paint, that I don't just, and I call it intuitive painting because I just sometimes close my eyes and I just, um, once I've chosen a couple of colors that I feel drawn towards, I just start painting and, there's like rubbing all kinds of shapes and sometimes using my fingers. And yeah, it's just been such an incredible experience for me because it's supported me in feeding that little girl within me. And at the same time, just having fun and being present and mindful. And so I really believe that if you can tap into any activity that allows you to be present, but that you also enjoy. So if you don't enjoy doing something that, makes you present, then by all means, do not do that. Just, find something else. It can be anything from, riding your bike or, you know, skateboarding or learning how to skateboard or anything, anything that kids tend to do, um, anything that feeds that curiosity and that supports you in kind of getting out of that judgmental voice about how you should do it. It's almost like you just allow yourself to surrender and just have fun with it. And, I'm not looking at being the best artist or, creating the most beautiful painting that there is out there. This is just something that I do for myself. And, funny enough, I've ended up having, my some of my paintings were exhibited in a library over here, and I also got offered to do an art market, on a weekend where I could sell my art. So there's so many wonderful things that can naturally come out of this when we're in that space of joy. And even things around food, like I've moved away from this obsession that I find, and I do think it's an obsession that we have, um, and I think even on a global scale, especially in the Western cultures where we can afford to have these kind of, diets and look at food in terms of good and bad, as opposed to just, enjoying food and being grateful for what you have and really appreciating it. I spent a couple of years ago, I spent a year, just over a year in Spain, and I was traveling around there, and I also met my husband there. But I just really learned how to appreciate, the pleasure of eating, the pleasure of
Mm.
enjoying food without this constant judgmental voice, which I used to have, when I was going through the eating disorder. And that was a horrible journey, just that constant judgment about what I look like, what I should eat, what I shouldn't eat. And I see it even today. People who don't necessarily have eating disorders, there's still almost like an obsession with food, that, this is good and that is bad. And so one of the things I've learned from um, reading A Course in Miracles, because I'm a student of reading A Course in Miracles, and I do read it every morning because that's kind of part of my little morning routine, is that these are just judgments. These are just things that you know, the mind creates, or that, our society, our environment, and we just go with it without questioning, without reflecting, without inquiring. Does that even serve me? Does that suit, my highest good, to just be so kind of judgmental about everything? And so now I just listen to my body, and I appreciate food, and I give thanks for it. And, even just before I'm going to eat something, I just say, oh, thank you for this amazing meal. And so I truly believe that when you focus on pleasure, when you focus on joy and fun, your perception of everything changes. You become almost like, kids. How kids are not judgmental usually. I mean, they become judgmental based on their environment, but little children, especially little babies, they look at themselves in the mirror and they kiss themselves. They rub their belly and want to show it to everybody. They're just full of love, full of curiosity, full of um, openness, and just wanting to learn, wanting to um, love everyone usually. And so I think that's the part of ourselves that we need to awaken in order to recover from any kind of um, illness or health issue.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this. Just sitting here, sitting back, listening to you, I feel this. It's like, and I've had this like similar conversations with other people, but being I'm a human, I need reminders, gentle reminders, and just listening to you talk about this brings this sense of calm. It's like listening to you talk about eating for pleasure and enjoying it and not getting caught up in worrying about good and bad just sounds so refreshing and so like I could actually take a deep breath. It doesn't
Mm.
come with the heaviness, that comes with the
Yes.
other way of being. Um, I have also in my past struggled with eating disorder more than once, and I realize, in my journey, is that sometimes we really honestly we replace one means of control almost with another, or one means of judgment with another, and I know I'll be vulnerable here and say an area that I'm still working through every day is to release the judgment of the good and bad, because, you know, I still get to a place where I have this story that says, oh my God, you're going to eat that. It's not organic. It's so bad. Oh, what's going to happen? Oh, how can I be healthy or well? And that is not light and like refreshing. That's heavy. And it feels like pressure and like a burden to carry. And what I've noticed and what I've come to understand is that those judgments that we're holding on to and like dictating our choices by is so much more stressful than the the potential like bite of something that is not organic. I mean, it's how you show up, it's why you choose something to eat, how you have the relationship with what you're eating versus what it actually is that's going to have the bigger impact.
Absolutely. I mean, I think health comes out of mind. So
Yeah.
therefore, we have to look at the relationship between the mind and the body. And we're only subject to what we hold in mind. So illness and any kind of, I believe, um, physical issue, even mental issue, is due to resistance. It's coming out of a program, a belief system with little memory of, often very little memory of where that came from. So very few people remember what happened before the age of 5. And until we can become conscious of some of these limiting programs and beliefs and cancel them out, they will remain, operative within the unconscious mind. And the body will do what the mind believes. So we tend to address the mind, um, moving into the actual consciousness itself. What we need to look at is what is being held in the consciousness. And if we are unconscious of what's going on within our conscious mind, then you know that's what we need to shed light on. And usually health comes out of a positive mental attitude, out of a willingness to be accepting, out of lovingness and an inner joyfulness, an inner state of peace. And so I truly believe that I'm only subject to what I hold in mind. If I believe that I will develop various health challenges, or if I will get unwell if I eat this thing, or if I'm getting older, then I will inherit a disease because it has been present within my family, or because I think it's something that, is genetic. And I'm allowing that collective belief system of many centuries, because, we have these collective systems of belief, to become my truth and in turn my reality. So, what we have to do is we have to review our beliefs. And often that happens, once something happens, once an illness takes place, or once chronic pain begins, or whatever, because the body is so wise. I truly believe that this instrument that we have, that I call our home, is so full of wisdom. It's always telling us what's going on for us, you know internally. So that's what is held in mind for an illness, is what contributes towards that being developed within the body. And you know often it's about exploring our belief systems. That's where the origin of our illness usually starts. So that's just the knowledge to know that you're programmable can help bring about a great therapeutic impact on our health. And so we have to ask ourselves, how have I been programmed by my society, by my culture, by my family members? And to really review these belief systems about everything, whether it's food, whether it's how a female body should look like, belief systems about illness and what runs in the family or in your culture, and also really letting go of resisting the pain. I get, my clients often ask me, oh my God, this happened to me last week, or this is happening to me right now. Can you just reassure me that this is TMS? Can you just please tell me that there's nothing wrong with me? And I always say to them, look, I'm not a physician. It is not my job to tell you that there's nothing wrong with you in that sense. Obviously, you always have to rule out any kind of physical issue, because that's just how it is. I can't examine you, um, your body, but I can support you with, I can examine your mind, and I can support you with what's going on for you right now. And often there's a pain that, the pain is because of the fear, and then the fear feeds the pain, and this becomes a vicious cycle. So it's really about learning to manage the fear, learning to allow the pain to exist. I remember, with just TMS and whatever, because it moves around. And God, it's been such an incredible journey, because it's just really helped me understand how wise my body is, and how it really does speak to me. Like if I have thoughts about, I'll actually give you an example. I remember when I was having thoughts about, um, just being angry, because I spent so many years since childhood suppressing my anger. But then when I started recovery, a lot of that anger came up to the surface, and then all I could do was just get angry quite quickly. I was being very reactive at one point, um, and that anger was consuming me. It was taking over. And so I started developing, like, I was getting iced eyes all the time, and I never used to get iced eyes. The you know what they are? It's just a little
Yeah.
thing that develops in your eye. And I kept thinking, why is this happening to me? Why am I just this? I've never, since I was a kid, I never used to get iced eyes. And then in a matter of just 6 months, I got 4, 5, I think even up to 6 iced eyes. And and it wasn't like I was rubbing my hands with dirt or anything. I wasn't doing anything different. And so once I looked up the metaphysical, um, reasons behind why you can develop an eye dye, it says that, you see the world through anger. It's when you see the world through angry eyes. And so there's almost like this red little pimple or whatever it is that forms in your eye. And I thought it was just so hilarious. I almost laughed when I found out. I was just like, this is so funny, because it's so true. It's like everything that I think on a daily basis, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is contributing towards how my body responds. And so letting go of the resistance and letting go of resisting the pain, even when there is pain, just thanking your body for speaking to you, for being so wise. And even just getting to a place where you can stop calling it pain and just call it discomfort. It's just discomfort. Because when we label things, we give them power.
Yeah. It's just another judgment. It's like what I hear you saying is, it makes me think of the word indifference to the quote unquote pain or discomfort. Or even we could go as far as saying, like you learn in a lot of the somatic tracking practices, it's just a sensation. It's just a different sensation.
Yeah.
What reference guide do you often use to resource the possible metaphysical connection to a specific pain, illness, or something showing up in the physical manifestation?
For me personally, Louise Hay's teachings and her book has been really helpful. She had a list that she, wrote and created, and I found that to be quite true for me personally. And that's something that I've used. That's been my reference. But I think ever since then, there's been a couple of other ones. There's another book. God, I've got it on my bookshelf, but I've forgotten the name. It basically is a book about, you know, how your body speaks to you and what every pain and illness is saying to you. I can't think of the name now, but it's brilliant.
Is it the when feelings buried alive never die?
No. This one is it's got a yellow cover, and I wish I had it with me here because I'm in a different room.
Oh, no problem. I was just curious because I know there's a couple different ones out there, and it's always nice to kind of cross-reference and just and just see what shows up, and check in with yourself and see if it makes sense. Like
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because before, when I was going through those years of really resisting pain, or resisting what I was going through, resisting I guess, the healing as well as the becoming aware, whatever I read in those books made me angry, almost like I would react, almost like, no, that's not true for me. I don't even know what this is saying. And now I look back and I'm like, isn't that funny how I was not just, obviously the resistance is not just in your body, it's also in your mind, because I believe that illness merely comes up in order to be healed. It brings up a lesson. And it's basically saying, hey, look at me. Please heal what I stand for. Please heal your guiltiness, your self hatred, your limiting thought forms. So the illness is a demand to grow spiritually. It is telling us that something, something is out of alignment. And not all my clients are obviously spiritually inclined or aware of that, but I personally believe that this is the case. And even with the people I support, I notice that once they continue with their sessions, they do eventually reach a point where they're like, okay, I get it now. There's more than just meets the eye, When you choose the energy field of love, healing naturally takes place. You got to love your pain. You got to love your body for communicating to you and showing you what's going on within you. It's just, telling you, hey, look at me. Please heal your self hatred. Please heal your limiting thought forms. You know, it just basically tells us that we need to look at things in a different way. It's our judgment about what happens, our attitude and our opinion that affects how we experience life.
Yeah. A popular saying that I reference a lot is that two things. One, pain is a request for change. And two, I've always believed that pain, the amount of pain and or illness that we experience in our physical body is showing us how far away we have gotten from our true authentic self, in spirit. Like it's that disconnect between who we're being and who we are meant to be.
Yes, absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
think the biggest thing, I keep saying the biggest thing because there's so many big things. Another big thing is to really heal that victim mentality, coming from the
Yes.
position of victim, and that makes us deny the healing power of our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's often because we put our source of happiness to things that are outside of ourselves, whether it's our job, relationship, money, title, position, the beauty of your physical body. That's when we put ourselves up for the loss of our health. Even though it's not conscious, you become vulnerable because you're constantly living in a state of fear of trying to protect that which you're afraid of losing, as your survival depends on it. And so, being healthy means that um, you have renowned yourself as, your own source of healing. It's a bit like I was referring to how important joyfulness is. When you do things, do it because it brings you joy. It's not that exercise makes us healthy, but it's our sense of aliveness as we are in the act of doing something we love and enjoy that contributes to that healing. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I like how you see it. I like it. It
Because
feels like
it
I
works
said
for
it.
me, it works for my clients too. I see it all the time. um, I think there's a couple of steps, and I know that sometimes people need practical steps. The first thing is, become aware of, and often you need to get therapeutic support for this stuff. I truly believe that it's hard to do this stuff on your own, but when you get that support, especially for people who know about TMS and work with TMS or any kind of mind body syndrome related issues, just becoming aware of what's going on for you and letting go of resisting that sensory experience of the pain and discomfort. So instead of putting labels and names on it, look at what you're experiencing and get curious about the experience. So instead of calling it pain, call it discomfort. And then it's also about looking at the belief systems. Instead of, I have this diagnosis, well, I have discomfort, I have disappointment. And the disappointment usually comes from that inner child. And the practice is about, becoming aware of that, becoming aware of the discomfort and the disappointment. And instead of um, calling it these names, these really scary names, and frightening that little child within us, just observe and notice, okay, this is what's happening, this is what's coming up for me. And I think um, spiritual practice is important because that's how you can get to a place where, you let go of the fear, or you can kind of coexist with fear without allowing it to take over completely, because you learn and trust that there is a higher power at play here, and that everything that's happening for me is happening for me, not to me.
Mm.
And choosing the energy of love that heals. I love my stomach, I love my neck, I love my knee, I love my back. Appreciating how much it does for you, and lowering those expectations. Okay, well, I couldn't go for a run today, but hey, I walked around my house. How awesome is it that I can walk around my house?
Mm-hmm.
So when,
Yeah.
when you can live in a state of lovingness, you can live with anything. It's not the emotion, it's a state of awareness and a way of being in the world. It's a form of acceptance and allowing for things to kind of be as they are, which is why I love the teachings of Eckhart Tolle. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but
I love him.
yeah,
I find him very, very, very soothing.
incredibly soothing. I do too.
Yeah.
So it's about an inner decision and inner intention from within to be a loving person, and to let go of being a victim in the world. And often that's frightening.
And that loving person starts with being loving to yourself.
Exactly. It's becoming conscious. How have I been kinder to myself today? How can I be kinder to myself? What am I saying in my mind all day long? What am I thinking? So it's like little baby steps, because, healing is a daily act. I mean, I still have to do this. This is not something that you just do and then you tick it off and then it's done. It's a daily act.
Until our last breath.
That's right. It's a constant remembering.
Hmm.
So, it's really a way of life. It's not something that you can just tick off and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm all good now.
Yeah. When you first so you had some eating disorders, and then you started healing through that, and then you started experiencing a gamut of TMS symptoms. Then what was kind of, you've gotten, I don't know how long it's been since you consider yourself fully recovered. It seems like you've gotten this really deep understanding of all this stuff, and understanding this need to choose to be, a person, like to be a loving person, and finding and creating the joy,
Mm.
and checking in with the little girl within. What was initially, like, what did you kind of have to do initially to get to the place where you could start to unveil this other stuff?
Well, I did actually go to therapy. So when I first decided to recover from the eating disorder, which was a huge decision because I had reached a massive rock bottom, and I truly believe that rock bottoms are, you know, incredible moments of humility and openness. It's almost like that's when we finally let go of resistance and just kind of go, okay, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And so I went to therapy for a while there, which I thought was incredibly healing and supportive. Um, but the other things have kind of been to, read books that have come in my way. Because I truly believe that once there is a decision, even if it's an internal decision, because, you know, it, I think everyone's got their timing. And if you're not ready, then it's going to be very hard. It's almost like you have to get to a place where you just go, okay, I want this stuff. I'm done with the pain, and I'm not referring to physical pain, because obviously I'm still, there are days where I still experience physical pain and things come up and I'm just going, oh, right. Okay. So I get it now. That's because I've pushed myself too hard today. And, you know, my body's always communicating to me. So I don't think that I'm not at a place where I never feel pain. I don't think that's realistic. It's more that you get to a place where you're like, I just know that there's a better way. There has to be a better way because my way is no longer working.
Mm-hmm.
And so you surrender. And often starting with getting professional help is really, a good way to get on this path. And if you have a negative experience with, professional support, then keep shopping around. I think just don't give up on yourself, because you can't do this stuff on your own. But then the next thing is, whatever comes in your way, like books, podcasts, videos, all of that stuff have, I've been guided towards, have supported me in becoming more aware of what's going on for myself. And then the next thing that I think is really important is just start having one practice per day, just one practice, a little practice per day that can help you feel like, okay, I can show up for myself. I can commit to things and I can follow through. So this can be anything from, like waking up every morning and just having a glass of water with some lemon squeezed in it, or it could be that you wake up every day and you just say thank you. Thank you for just, being able to wake up to another day. So starting with something really small, and then once you do that for 30 days, adding other things to it that you can commit to, because I think self-betrayal is a big part of relapse and why people just keep doubting themselves, because they betray themselves, they betray their needs, they betray their wants and desires and what's actually good for them. And they get caught up in this cycle of responsibility and what I should do, what my mind is telling me I have to do, as opposed to what I really need. And so starting a little practice like that and just building on that is really good. It's a good way of just knowing that you can show up for yourself, building that trust and relationship with yourself. And then for me personally, as I mentioned before, I read, one lesson from A Course in Miracles every morning. So having a quiet time has been important for me. And the color therapy, painting, and, I've even reached a point where I'm giving workshops in color therapy and art therapy. And just walking in nature has been good for me. I do yoga just for myself at home a couple of times a week. And I find that to be a great practice because it's a top down approach, because you're training your mind to communicate to your body. It's almost like you set intentions with your mind to, let's say, go into a specific pose. And even though your body might struggle, you train your mind and your body to sit with that discomfort and to kind of become more aware of what's going on in your body. So these are the different things that have really supported me, and still are supporting me in my journey. I don't know if that answered your question, Shaz.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, it's just I think a lot of times when people are kind of just starting to sift through this new, they're past all the Western medicine, and they're realizing that there might be a mental component and a mind component to the to where they might have got, how they might have gotten where they are, and they're starting to do that mind body work. I think people are always just looking for ideas, or like, what could I do? And so it's just great for people to be able to share what works for them. And just because it works for one person doesn't mean it will be for everybody, but it's great just to get ideas and get inspiration. And maybe, you say, I did this, and then somebody's like, oh, well, I'm not really interested in the painting, but wow, I really miss sketching. I used to do that when I was a kid, or,
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Because I mean, another thing that I want to highlight is asking yourself these questions. So, even if you do it in your journal, or if you do it by just putting your hand on your heart and just closing your eyes for a minute and just saying, what do you need today? What can I give you today that will make you feel good and make you feel happy? Because we often focus on doing that for others, but we rarely focus on doing that for ourselves. And I think that's important, to connect with that part of yourself, and to just um, even practice, even if you can't hear anything, just practice. Okay, because TMS is not rational, and I don't think the healing is rational either. I think it's more emotional and spiritual, in my experience. So, I remember when I was going through back pain. I mean, I was in bed for 3 months. I could barely walk. And I would go to the chiropractor, and every week, sometimes twice a week, and the chiropractor would be like, I don't even know what to do anymore, because I've done everything I can for you. I don't even know why you're struggling to walk. Or the months that I spent, going through acid refluxes and hip pain and pins and needles, you name it. I've been through pretty much everything when it comes to TMS, but I never once asked myself during those days, what do you need? All I kept doing was focusing on the pain, remaining stuck in that victim mentality. Someone outside of me needs to fix me, right? And so I kept giving my power away, not even knowing that I have this power. And so just by asking yourself these few simple questions every day, you can start by regaining that power. How can I be kinder to myself today? And I keep repeating them because they're so important. How can I love you today? How can I, give to you today? What is it that you need from me? And if the answer is not rational, that's okay. That's great. That's the thing. It's not meant to be, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to reemphasize it again. You already said it, but just for anyone listening, I'm going to reemphasize this because of personal experience. If you don't get any answer, it's okay. Just keep asking and ask the next day and ask the next day, because if you keep checking in, eventually something will show up, an answer will come.
I love that, Chez. Exactly. It's a bit like, how kids are. The inner child is very similar to literally any child. If you look at a child who's been through difficulties, or who's in pain, or who's going through challenges, often they don't want to talk, and they might go days or weeks without talking. And if you're a loving parent, you be patient. You show up every day and you still love them, and you still do what you can to support them. And so it's kind of similar thing. It's a similar approach for your inner child within you. You just have to keep showing up for it.
Yeah, they have to know that they feel safe enough to finally speak up. I know it can be easy to not get an answer and then just want to quit and not keep trying. But I also know the power in continuing to show up and trusting. That's why I wanted to emphasize that. Because I know I've been the one that's but I don't get an answer. I don't hear anything. No, and it's just keep showing up. Just keep showing up.
Absolutely. It's about building that authentic relationship with the self within you. And I highlight this a lot in my book, just building a relationship with yourself and bringing awareness to every aspect of yourself, especially the disowned parts of yourself, which is the shadow. That's the work.
I love it. I know we are limited on getting limited on time here, but I did want to open up the space and actually, speaking of your book, allow you to maybe share a little bit about your book and your coaching practice. And, if people are feeling really connected to your message, how they could connect with you and, if you're taking clients and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely take on clients still, and I've got a practice here in Brisbane, Australia, but a lot of my clients are pretty much based all over Australia, and I'm happy and open to seeing clients even overseas. And so the way that I work is quite, it's very similar to any other therapeutic, I guess, support, in the sense that, we usually do 1 hour sessions. And once I receive an email from someone, then I get them to, go through like an intake form and ask them a couple of questions. And then once we have our initial session, then that's when I make an assessment as to whether, what their issues are and how I can best support them. My approach is very inclusive of, Dr. Sano and Dr. Howard Schuppener's research on mind-body syndrome. And I also incorporate a lot of just everything from, CBT, meditation, in session, mindfulness, acceptance commitment therapy, CBT. I mentioned CBT, things like shadow work, archetypal work, solution focused brief therapy, the polyvagal theory, which I find to be really interesting on the nervous system, and also compassionate inquiry, which is a method developed by Dr. Gabor Mate, and which reveals what lies beneath the appearances that we present to the world. So my approach is all about remaining present with my clients and creating a fully open and authentic space where, you know, healing can take place, and responding to everyone's unique situation, because, you know, every person is unique. What they're going through is unique. Even though there are similarities, I always try to remain open to the fact that this is a unique experience for them and for me, because it's a, you know, it's a different person. And so, with regards to my book coming to life, it's an autobiography about my journey towards discovering my authentic self, through surrendering to the energy of love and forgiveness. I think forgiveness has been also another thing that has helped me a great deal, you know, forgiving my parents and forgiving myself. It's a book about pain, growth, exploration, you know, trauma recovery, self love, self discovery, and realizing that your story is your strength. So I talk a lot about, you know, starting from a little girl caught up in an overpowering bubble that presented itself as a war between two nations, because I was actually born in Iran. And I start off by sharing about my upbringing and kind of growing up as a refugee child and the challenging and often painful abusive situations that I was in, and how that trauma affected me as an adult, and how I took those patterns of behavior and carried them with me into my adulthood and into my relationships and various life decisions and choices. So it's my first book, and it's so interesting because when I wrote the book and even went through, you know, the support of publishing it with my publisher, I once the book was published, I discovered a whole bunch of little spelling errors despite having gone through the book, you know, God, up to 20 times even, you know, and even my publisher had been through it and so on. And I started laughing because I thought, isn't this just perfect? You know, this is a perfect experience in teaching me to let go of this sense of perfectionism that I've had, you know, that I've carried for so many years. And I started, you know, I thought it was hilarious how this happened despite all the efforts made. And so yeah, it's it's a great read, and I'm actually working on my second book right now. So that's another thing that will come out hopefully next year. And in that book, I will be diving in deeper into everything from the mind body syndrome related issues, as well as how the mind continues to trick us.
Mm, that's going to be good.
Yes, and how its job is always to protect us from things that are uncomfortable. So when you're uncomfortable, it can be a really good thing actually, because that means, you know, you're starting to change things. You're starting to incorporate a new habit, you know, you're becoming more open. And, you know, I'm very passionate about how powerful we are, and, you know, just really tapping into the power of our mind and our spirit, and knowing that, you know, healing is not just something that's for a couple of people, or that's selective and it's only for some people who prove themselves, or whatever it is that we might think. Healing is available for everyone. We actually are here to heal and become more conscious and expand in conscious awareness.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And I really love your little how you shared about the spelling errors, because that's just that's such a great thing to just kind of laugh at the universe. It's like, okay. And it's just like, hey, you're just out there proving to me that no matter how much I try to control it and make something perfect, it's still going to
Yeah,
be what it is.
because I promise you, Shaz, I really, we went through so much to edit this book and just make sure that there were no spelling errors. And yet I found quite a few afterwards. And I thought, wow. And I, I honestly, even though initially it was very, you know, I felt a sense of shame and it brought up stuff for me. And I was like, oh my God, it kind of triggered that old program. I just surrendered to it and I went, God, it's so liberating when you can just let go of being perfect, when you can just let go of trying to prove yourself to the world, when you can just let go of being anything other than who you are right now in this moment. Because, it's exhausting living that way. It truly is exhausting. I mean, I know a lot of people live that way and carry that kind of burden, and they seem to be doing fine, but it doesn't work for me. It drains me. It drains my body. It drains my spirit,
I don't think it's good for anyone. I think it's probably exhausting for all of us. It just shows up differently, in each person and at different times.
Yeah, and yet we try that all the time. I mean, if you look at how the world kind of expects you to present yourself often, and it's, I say the world because we all have these beliefs, right? The things that we project onto the world. Just how we meant to act and be, and what we consider to be a success. I mean, the definition of success is what? Having a whole bunch of followers, or having a whole bunch of money, or looking a certain way. I mean, yeah, I've kind of personally reached a point where I'm like, that doesn't work for me, and I don't want to go through my life struggling and suffering and trying to prove something all the time, because it's exhausting. I want to enjoy this ride, as much as I can, and I want to learn as much as I can.
Yeah, because it is otherwise exhausting. And I would say from personal experience that sometimes we can almost make success, like we can create this expectation of what health is supposed to be and feel like, and then that can be our indicator or expectation of success. And that in and of itself can become exhausting, because now you're just constantly putting this pressure to do all these things and do this work to reach this expectation of what health is supposed to feel like. And that can also come with shame, because then if you're doing all the things and you're and you're still not always feeling healthy or not feeling well, or you have you're not meeting that expectation, then you start thinking, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? I'm not doing something right. Maybe I need to do more. And so again, it's just taking the same set of beliefs or, behavioral traits and just transferring it into a different, in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wrote this book for myself, to be honest with you, but I also thought, hey, because I love to write, just to begin with, I love to write, and that's why I decided to write this book. And I thought, in my journey, immersing myself in books written by those who had turned their pain into their message really helped me commence my journey from an internal fight and fear to spiritual growth and wisdom. So perhaps my journey can help support somebody else. Who am I to judge that, right? And that's when I realized that I don't have to follow anyone else's path or ideas about what and where my life should be and by what age, but rather turn my pain into a message, into my message, and embrace the idea that everything in my life happened for a reason and is unfolding exactly as it's meant to. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm yet to see the ending of it all. But when we give up the need to control how and when things unfold, we can start to practice the art of surrendering and allowing. And the spiritual path is all about this yielding art. As we practice letting go of our need to control, we allow for life to unfold naturally and in accordance with our highest, with our growth and highest truth.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Every day I say, Chasmith, you are right on time. You're perfectly aligned. You're doing all the right things and you're on the right path. Now take a deep breath.
That's it. Don't forget to breathe.
Breathe. Oh, okay, Sarah, this is so fun. I feel like you have such a really calming, I'm going to say the word liberating presence, right? Because it's so opposite. Everything you're speaking to is such like a perfect opposite of the alternative, the exhausting feelings, the exhausting choices. And I'm enjoying our conversation. I wanted to ask you one more question just to kind of end it. And I was wondering if, you've shared so many great things and so many messages, but if you had to sum it all up, what would be like the most important message that you want to share with the world?
I think what I would like to say is let go of the nuances because life is full of nuances, right? Let go of the little things that keep getting to you every day and focus on, you know, how can I allow for this to be? How can I enjoy for this, like enjoy this experience and somehow see it as something that's really meant to be a part of my life. You know, it's not a threat. It's just, it's something that's meant to be a part of my life. And how can I just embrace it? You know, it's a bit like look at your pain as if it's a little kid that's crying and it's in pain and you just have to comfort it. And when you see your pain from that kind of compassionate perspective, then I truly believe that, you know, it starts to recover, it starts to heal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
People, you know, there's been endless research on how the power of love can truly heal anything. I think I read once there was this study of putting cooked rice in a container in two different containers and then, you know, showering one container with loving words and then the other container just, you know, writing all kinds of horrible critical things on the container and just judging it. And the rice that had been covered with these loving words and this loving energy lasted much longer than the rice that was in the container that didn't. I mean, I know it's a bit out there, but it was a really interesting study. And I thought, wow.
No, it's super awesome. And there's another one too that has to do with like plants and yeah, like how you speak to your plants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Plants.
So
Yes.
love. So
I
it seems
actually,
so. Go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, I actually do this with my paintings. And you can see my paintings. I've got an Instagram account called Sarah DK Art. And in my paintings, I do the same thing. I start off by writing like a whole bunch of you know, positive words on the canvas: joy, love, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, you're so wonderful, I love you. And then I start, you know, kind of working on the layers. So the core of the canvas is always covered with beautiful, loving words, you know, and
Mm.
that's the energy that I put on it. And so I notice the difference between the paintings when I do that for and in the paintings when I don't do that for. And so I truly believe in this. I really do. I think the one thing that I would encourage everyone to take with them from, you know, this conversation is try to bring that lovingness to everything that's happening in your life, even the things that are painful. You know, just look at what can I appreciate about this. And if I'm finding it really hard to appreciate, then how can I see this discomfort, this pain, whether it's emotional or physical, as a little kid that really truly needs my love, needs my nurture. You know, even just being able to make space for something that's difficult, breathing into something, you know, allowing it to be can be a loving act, a
Yeah.
huge loving act, because often we tend to reject things, right? So just that little practice of making space for something, breathing into something that's difficult, allowing it to be and showing it love is incredibly powerful.
I agree. It seems so simple, but love really, love really does make the world go round. It really
Yeah,
does heal. Love is, what's there? There's a saying, love is all there ever was and will be. Like love, love is, love does.
and this does not mean that, you know, you can't feel angry, you can't feel any of
Yes.
your other emotions, not at all. I'm a big believer of embracing all of your emotions, but we don't need to suppress them and we don't need to project them. So there
Right.
is a place where you can embrace all of, you know, all of that you are and all of that you feel without necessarily this constant suppression and projection that's happening in our world today.
Yes. Yes. Uh, I love that you said that because, yes, to be in a state of love does not mean that you're denying all the other feelings. To be honest, it is actually loving towards yourself to allow the other feelings to be expressed and experienced.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have you at Sarah DK Art for your Instagram. How else can people follow you or connect with you?
Sure. So I have a website called mentalawakening.com.au. So that's my official website for my clinic. You can also find me on the same name on Facebook and Instagram. So Mental Awakening AU. You have to kind of put that AU at the end. So those are the main ways of reaching me. I also have another website, which is mainly for my art and the art therapy classes that I run, which is under my name, and that's sarahdakhili.com.
Okay. Cool. All right. I will leave all that in the show notes as well, so people can direct link to those platforms and get in touch with you.
Thank you so much, Shaz. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Yes, you too. I really appreciate it. I feel very calm and yeah, I just feel like that was a really beautiful conversation, and you have a really beautiful outlook. So thank you for sharing.
And thank you for creating this space where these kind of conversations can take place. It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, it's so fun. All right, that's a wrap, friends. Thanks for being on this journey with me. I hope that after today's episode, you are inspired to shift your focus into creation of some sort, and I hope you will give a go at tapping into that inner creative and challenge yourself to create something that you may have never done before. And I will be right there with you. As usual, if you have a story or a message that you would love to share, please reach out and let's connect. And until next time, make this week great.